So, hi, Robert. Thank you so much for joining me on this new Joyous Life episode. And first of all, why don't I have you introduce yourself to our audience here? What
I
is it
would be
that you do?
I would be happy to because, based on a joyous life, that
Yes.
is the life I'm living now. It wasn't always that way. And let me back up to, because we all get this roadmap wherever or however we get this roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
from your parents, from going through your formal educational process. But my roadmap was, go out and get a good education, find the right person that, you that would make you happy as far as marrying, and I've been happily married for 38 years and find a good job. Now, our family, and that our family started the high school war cheerleading jacket business back in the 1930s, 1938.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was there was too much family in the family business. It was my family.
Okay.
And, I realized early on that there were certain limitations. They didn't necessarily want to change, and whatever, for whatever reason. So I started exploring possible alternatives of how I could figure out how to create a joyous life where I didn't have to work a job, but it didn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And part of how it happened, and I'll give you a little bit more of a background, even though I got an education or I got a degree, I really didn't get the education. And I came across a cassette tape series by Wayne Dyer, No Limit Person. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started to realize that the limits that existed in my life, I was responsible for them being there. See, once you take responsibility for whatever is, so if you're in if you're in working a job that you don't like, you know, look at how and why you ended up there. But once you take responsibility for what is, you can take it for what will be. But unfortunately, many people are in a state of denial, and I love the acronym of denial. Don't even notice I am lying. So the point is, if you're working in a job that you don't like, that, my first suggestion is find out, and that's why they, in all reality would want to connect with you, Miriam, because you're going to find them, some kind of work that they like, you know,
Right.
something that they're really going to love. But, anytime you have a job, you're just trading time for money. And obviously, we need that until you are able to figure out whatever is going to make you really happy, because you don't want to work a job your whole life.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, that's a little bit about my background and how I've gotten to the point where I'm at today. It's like I have not worked a job since September 7th, 1990. I'm psychologically unemployable, but that didn't happen overnight.
Right. 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 Nothing happens overnight. My clients know that. I tell them right from the start.
Yes.
But we can continuously improve and learn and get to a point where we want to be because you want to have enough money set aside so that you can enjoy life more, right? So we talked about that previously. You need cash coming in, but once you have it coming in, learn to set some money aside so that you have some free time that you can enjoy as well.
Exactly. So, and let me go back for a second. It's like once I listened to the cassette tape series by Wayne Dyer, I
Mm-hmm.
started to realize for things to change, I needed to change. I needed to change my mindset. I needed to change my skill set. And, I started to go to the library. You could check out cassette tapes. I mean, obviously, many people at the younger generation don't even remember what a
Right.
cassette tape is, but you could check out, at the library today, they still got CDs. There's all this information that you can get for free. But it's understanding that if for things to get better, no matter what is going on in your life, you need to improve your skill set and you need to
Mm-hmm.
position yourself properly. And that's why people would want to come to you so that you can help them with their resume so that they can find that right kind of work.
Right. Right. But it's also a question of change, right? Not just what your parents told you to do, your partner later on. I noticed in your background you have better change. You have a chameleon. and you have a podcast about that. Do you want to talk about this briefly so that my clients can understand the mindset they have to have?
Sure. It goes back, I think it was 65 years ago. My cousin, and as I mentioned this, I never met him. He's a third cousin, but he wrote a song. And in the song, the lyrics were, "You better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. Times are changing, my friend." I take a look at from the time I got involved in business and all the changes that have happened. I mean, there was no internet back when I started. They didn't have AI. I mean, there are so many different changes. So change is inevitable. It's recognizing the change and being able to embrace the change for real results. So, I love acronyms. Real, recognizing the change, embrace the change, the actions necessary, and how you're able to leverage your resources, because ultimately the biggest thing that we're all looking for is results and to be happy and to have a life of meaning. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, if you're in a dead-end job, you don't want to stay in that dead-end job too long. I mean, that's the time, it's the easiest time to find the right job is when you're working, because you're not in a desperate situation. But I
Correct.
mean, obviously you can help people in either situation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's better off if they've got a job coming in to find more meaningful work.
Right. People have to feel valued. They have to feel they have a contribution to make, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening? It says, I don't know how to read your two words. Is it better change or is it a better change that you have
Both,
in your podcast?
both. You want to have both. The one question I tell people that they should be asking themselves every single day:
Mm-hmm.
what changes should I make so that I will get better results in my life? Become
Mm-hmm.
conscious and aware of the changes. I don't know what they are in your life. I don't know what's necessarily, whoever's listening to this, what's happening in their life. But you
Right.
should be you should be conscious and aware of how you can make the changes. I mean, you take a look at the things that are at our fingertip as long as you're conscious and aware of them. AI, for example, and my business partner and I talk about AI as your accelerated innovation for business differentiation. There's if you plug into technology, and there's many different ways to be able to plug into that technology. And I've said this from stage and I've spoken around the world that I believe it's easier for people to become wealthy today than any other time in history. And the reason why, even for example, March of 2020, when the pandemic and everything was going crazy, you know, I realized that, and that's everybody started doing Zooms, and it's like it opened up a whole nother world for me. So it's embracing the changes, recognizing the changes, and realizing how you can utilize those changes in a way that will help you as it relates to what's going on in your life.
So I think what is good too, because I've listened, yeah, I've attended a couple of your podcasts, is that many people today are afraid of the artificial intelligence, but actually they cannot replace humanity yet. So people need to learn how to embrace and incorporate AI into their lives and roles, right? Business role. Um, and I think that's what you talk about, right? The various possibilities of doing that.
Yes, I mean, obviously, with a lot of what's happening in the world, there's a positive and a negative. I
Right.
mean, certain people are going to use AI in a negative way. And unfortunately, that's where their level of consciousness is. It's just what is. But those that realize it's like, how can this assist me? It's like, for example, grammar isn't always my best subject. So I was introduced to Grammarly. With ChatGPT, if you set up your profile so it knows who you are, and the more you use it, it gets to understand. Yes, you've got to check it, but it's like anytime I write, first of all, Grammarly checks out, makes it more proper. Then I put it into ChatGPT and I say, can you improve this? Now, I don't necessarily am always going to like the changes that happen, but
Mm-hmm.
for example, you got perplexity.ai. Anytime I've got a question about something, I can ask Perplexity. it's understanding you've got these things that can be of assistance to you. And it's how to utilize in a way that will allow you to move your life forward. Going back to the when I listened to the Wayne Dyer cassette tape series, I realized I needed to take responsibility for what I wanted in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started to change my mindset. I just started to plug into more cassettes, reading more books, attending more seminars. But I knew that if things were going to change, I needed to make the changes accordingly.
Right. So now you repeated this several times, and I hope my listeners picked up on that, is that you are responsible for your own actions and you have to take accountability and work from that point forward, right? If you notice things need to change, make the change and move forward, especially in this rapidly moving world. And you talked about Grammarly, which is for grammar, that you then put into ChatGPT. And you also talk about Perplexity, which you just introduced me to last week. So Perplexity works with Google, doesn't it? And it looks things up for you on the internet. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if it works with Google, but anytime you anytime you got a question, like how can I get better referrals? How can I do this? Like James put in, my business partner, James Feldman, who has
Mm-hmm.
helped some very large companies increase sales over $3 billion. He was having a problem with his refrigerator. He told the story last week, and he put the serial number in, and he said, "Should I get a new serial number or not?" It came back and said, and to replace the part, it was $4,000. Perplexity said, "You've got a 20-year-old refrigerator. Don't fix it." It's like, another friend of mine wanted to know how to get better referrals. He put it into Perplexity as it relates to what he's doing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying there's information out there to become conscious and aware and plugging into it and using it in a positive way.
Very good. Very good. So we're slowly but surely nearing the end of our conversation, unfortunately. Are there any resources you would suggest to our listeners?
There's a lot of resources. The first resource, and again, you've got YouTube, and one of besides Wayne Dyer, Jim Rohn, ROHN, take charge of your life. You can get it
Yeah,
for free by going to YouTube and just, search Jim Rohn. But there's so many things, so many resources that, you can plug into. Simon Sinek, begin with your why, just to name a couple.
right.
If you've got any questions, you're more than happy to email me and set up a time on my calendar. Or you can give them my calendar link. But there are so many resources out there
Mm-hmm.
that you can plug into.
Yes, we will put your information that you send right underneath the video so people can contact either you or me if they so choose. Now, how do you spell Jim Rome's last name?
ROHN.
Rohm. Okay,
Yeah.
very good, because it's hard to know. So that'd be a good resource. And Sid Sinek, I've heard him several times. Very good. He also
Well,
has TED Talks.
well, no, Jim has passed away, but he was Tony Robbins' mentor. Tony Robbins, most
Ah,
people have heard about Tony Robbins. Tony used to work for Jim Rohn way back in the day. When
uh-huh,
Tony met him, he was living in a car, whatever. But again, there's another example of a person that realized and he became a student of life, and he embraced change and embraced learning. Harvey McKay is another good one. Dig your well before you're thirsty. The key is, networking. I look at myself as a street smart networker,
right.
and that's what I meant. It's the key in everything is developing meaningful business relationships.
Relationship is key in everything, right? Not have
Yeah,
transactional interactions, but relational interactions. You have to build relationship with
exactly.
everyone. And that's what will separate us and keep us separated from AI too, I believe, because they can't do it. They're just programmed to do whatever is researched and put into them.
Yeah. It still comes down to the human connection. AI, it can help you, but it's still, what makes the world go around is people and the right connections.
Correct. Correct. So, well, I'm so glad you're one of my connections, Robert. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on. And thank you for this conversation. I hope our listeners will learn something from it. So, anything else you wish to add? If not, we will say goodbye.
I'll give you 5 simple but profound words.
Okay.
If nothing changes, nothing changes.
That
If
is
you're not
correct.
happy, that's why you want to reach out to somebody like yourself, Myriam, myself, that can help you as it relates to what's going on in your life and
Mm-hmm.
figure out some simple little things that you might be able to do different. But
Right.
the key is you have to be serious and committed to making the
Correct.
change necessary.
Correct. You and not anyone around you. Because if it's not you, it's not going to happen. So,
Exactly.
very good. Thank you so much for coming on, Robert. I really appreciate it. And wishing you a wonderful rest of the day.